Thank you, Julie, and for all of the efforts that you put into making this possible. I'm extremely pleased to introduce our speaker this morning, Kelley Holland. Kelley is a dear friend of mine. Her parents who lived here were dear friends of mine, neighbors on my floor. And I have always admired the good advice that Kelley has given, even to me, who is very old and thought I knew everything about money. I always learned something new from her. And especially, I'm pleased with the topic for today, how you can shift from anxiety about money to abundance, and how you can have your money all your life. That's really kind of scary when you get to the point where you're not so sure which one will last longer. Kelley is a very experienced person in terms of finance. She is the founder and CEO of Own Your Destiny, which provides financial coaching and empowerment programs to help women gain confidence and knowledge they need to achieve well-being and live life on their terms. She blends her knowledge of finance and communication expertise developed over 2 decades as an award-winning business and personal finance journalist for the New York Times, Business Week, CNBC. One of her cover stories helped Business Week win a national magazine award. Kelley has appeared on CNBC, PBS's Frontline, and dozens of radio shows to speak about banking, investment, and personal finance. She graduated from Amherst College, holds a graduate business degree from the Yale School of Management. She's a chartered financial analyst. She lives in New Jersey. What I most want to say about her is that she not only knows things about finance, she lives them. I like the way she keeps going forward in her path to learn new things, even though she has many, many experiments, many research projects, many things that she has done to learn about money. She never stops learning. I also like the way she shares. As she moves up, she helps other women to follow her and also have the financial freedom. And she pays it forward, teaching us how to leave a legacy to our children, to our communities, our world, on how to manage money effectively and use it as a legacy to your own life. So I'm very, very pleased to introduce Kelley Holland. After the program, she will be here in the back of the room. She will talk to you about her book if you wish. She can answer questions. I ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation, and at that time I'll come around with the microphone. So Kelley, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out on a very busy morning. I had forgotten how active OCAMIC is. It's kind of exhausting here, really. So have you ever had a day when you woke up thinking, I've got it all together. I am a boss. I've got the world, it's under my control. And then you are very abruptly made to realize that, no, not at all. Anyone ever have a day like that? Everyone ever have a day like that? Okay. My day came when I was 21, and I had landed my first job out of college. I got an apartment, I got a car, and I assumed my financial life would just work out. I mean, I had a paycheck, right? Well, it was an ordinary Friday morning, and I was driving to work, and I stopped at a light just before this downhill slope to my office, and I glanced at my gas gauge. Is it? Oh, Here we go. And it was on empty. And I realized I was out of fuel. And not only that, I needed to go down that hill in neutral because I was also out of cash. And I didn't have enough money to put gas in my car until I got to work that day and got paid. Right. Oh, I forgot a detail. This was a financial management training program. Okay. Well, I made it down the hill and I got my paycheck. I put gas in the car and went on with my life. And eventually, I even figured out how to take charge of my money. And I tell that story in my book, so I won't bother with it here. But in that moment, at that stoplight, some of you could probably script the talk that I had with myself. It went something like, "You're so dumb. How could you do this? This is a disaster." And so on. Anyone ever have those little conversations with themselves? Yeah. And I'm telling you that story because I suspect that many of you have had similar conversations with yourself at some point around money. So as I wrote this book, I interviewed over 100 women about their feelings about money and their relationship to money. And here's how they said they feel. This is a graphic called a word cloud, and what it is I've taken all their responses, and the ones that appear more commonly are larger. So you can see the biggest words. We've got anxious, we've got stressful, necessity, love, hate gets, honorable mention, and ultimately security, right? But we don't get freedom. Freedom is rare. These aren't power words that we have here, right? This is really quite true. This is quite common among women. This is 100 women. Does anybody recognize these feelings? Anybody ever have these feelings? You can raise your hand. There we go. Yeah. So here's the thing. Money can be described in a lot of ways. It's bits of metal. It's pieces of paper. In school, we learn that it's a medium of exchange. But at its core, what is it? Money is a tool. It's just a tool, no more and no less. It's a tool that can help us achieve our life goals and dreams. But we ascribe this tremendous power to it, right? The thing is, remember, it's a tool, right? And when we take care of our money, we are taking care of ourselves. It's not crass to care about your money. It's not, tacky. It's self-care. But here's the thing. While money is an incredibly important tool, unlike most tools, it doesn't come with a user manual. And it's really a matter of chance as to whether we ever get that information, especially women. Now, in families, and maybe you can think about yourselves as parents, or I don't know, but I certainly did when I read this. Evidently, in families, boys get more financial information than girls from the parents. They have those conversations more often, and they're more likely to be conversations about investing and making your money grow. The girls will have some conversations, but a lot of them will be about budgeting and saving and spending wisely. So very different. And then usually we don't learn these things in school either. It's just not taught very often or terribly well. And if we try to learn on our own, what happens? Boom, there's that wall of jargon. Ever look up a mutual fund and it's, moderate maturity, alpha index sustainable bond fund? Who wants more of that, right? It's just impossible. And it's not necessary. But what we do get is a lot of messaging about women being, say it with me, bad with money, right? Poor investors, all those chronic overspenders, right? I did a Google search on the word investor, and I looked at the images that came up. What do you notice? A lot of white men, right? Now, the reality is none of those things about women, those stereotypes are true. If you look at the federal data, like from the federal government about spending, single men spend more than single women. They might be buying more tech and more cars, and we're buying more clothes, but they spend more. And also, we're not risk averse. That's another stereotype. We're risk aware. We tend to stop and think and consider all the possible outcomes. And in fact, it turns out that women are pretty good at investing. Fidelity Investments measured how their female and male clients' brokerage accounts performed over a 10-year period. And guess what? The female clients outperformed. Yep. Partly because they stop and think before they just lunge for the next hot tip. But they outperformed. But look at this, only 1/3 of women feel confident in their ability to make investment decisions. So there's a real disconnect there. We have these skills, but we don't feel like we have what it takes. So not surprising, it's not surprising that 6 in 10 women say they'd rather talk about their own death than about money. It's true. Now, feeling bad about how we handle our money is not just the province of women. There are plenty of men who feel challenged in this area as well. But remember, women structurally face an unequal playing field. I was talking about this yesterday with someone, right? We spend time out of the workforce in our prime earning years taking care of little kids. We are paid less than men. Therefore, we have less accumulation of retirement savings. And then the icing on the cake is we live longer. So there are all these structural challenges that we face. And when you layer on feeling anxious and less than confident, it's really hard to push back against all of that. So yes, we need a user guide. We need to know the nuts and bolts of taking care of our money. But before we get that user guide, we have to change how we feel about ourselves in relation to money. So before I wrote this book and before I became a financial coach and did all this interviewing, I was a journalist and I was writing about personal finance, and I got more and more interested in women's financial challenges, and I would write articles about how women need to save earlier and work a little longer and all these things. And they were good articles and they were well received, but nothing was changing. I had a lot of company writing stories like these, but nothing was changing. The pay gap was stuck. Women's workforce participation was stagnant. Nothing was changing. So that's when I realized something else was missing, and that was that mindset piece. And so that's when I went and got my training as a financial coach. And that's why I help women first with the mindset around money, and then when we're receptive to the information, then the information, because that's when it becomes information you can act on and be in charge. So the idea is that before we can really absorb all the how-to information, we need self-trust. Oh, we've got that thing in there. Okay, it's perfectly fine. If we can build self-worth, then we can build net worth. That's the concept. We need to believe we are capable and deserving of building these skills, just like we have learned to do so many things at work or here at Oak Hammock or in our families or anything else. So maybe, So part of that is, excuse me for a second. Okay, we need to believe we are capable and deserving of building these skills just like we've learned to do all these things. So perhaps some of you can name a skill or a talent or a trait that could help you when it comes to managing money. Just a personal quality that you have or some special knowledge you can bring to bear. Maybe you're super organized. Maybe you love a good spreadsheet. Somebody does. Patience is a great one. Just let your money work for you. Yeah. Qualities that you might not think of. Maybe you are great at making up recipes. Well, that's a great skill that you could transfer to finding the right mix of investments for your savings. There are lots of different qualities that we have that we might not recognize as skills for money management, but they can help. We know more than we think we do. And then we also need motivation, something we want so much in life, at whatever stage we're at, that we are willing to wade out of our comfort zone and learn new things and start dealing with our finances. Because when we start connecting, putting our money to work with our own heartfelt, intrinsic life goals, that's when we have a reason to do it, and it becomes worth it, even if it's uncomfortable. So a personal motivation I have is that I am desperate to spend 6 months in a sublet in Paris. This is my thing. Like, my husband's retiring at the end of the year, and I would really like to be able to spend 6 months in Paris walking around with a baguette in my bag and all the other things, but I have to save for it and invest my money so it'll grow. So I do. So anybody else want to talk about motivation that you have? Maybe it's related to grandkids or to legacy giving. Anybody want to share? Legacy giving. What's the cause that makes you? Anything for social justice. That's beautiful. Leave the world a more just place. Anyone else? Phyllis.
For my son and my sole granddaughter, my sole grandchild.
Beautiful.
His daughter.
Beautiful. For the people who follow us.
The future, the long-term future is extremely unpredictable.
It is.
And I think they're going to need all the resources they can find.
That's a huge motivator. That's so well put. Oh, sorry. So that was, so Phyllis said she's focused on taking care of her son and her sole granddaughter because the world is an uncertain place and they will need all the resources and help they can get. It's a pretty great motivation. So we all have these kinds of personal motivations if we think about it. And if we can have that motivation and keep it top of mind, that gives us a why for getting in there and getting our money working for us the way we want. Because once you believe you can and you have this motivation, then you can start to learn the skills to make it happen. So here's what that skill building looks like, and we'll talk about these in a little bit of detail. First up is know where our money is. Now that sounds super basic, but think about it. Think about, all the accounts that you have. There's some retirement account that's paying out for you, and there's Social Security, and you may have a pension somewhere, and meanwhile you've got other expenses that you have to take care of. You're funding a grandchild's 529 account, or paying for someone's, making someone's mortgage payments, or whatever it is, right? You might have pet care, all the things. Our financial lives can be really, really complicated, and I haven't even talked about investments. So it's really a great idea to get everything organized, know where your money is, because I've had people not get this right. Don't just get the account numbers and the passwords, make sure you know which one goes with which. I really got a phone call once from someone. She said, I got my husband to give me all the passwords, but I don't know what they're for. Well, that's pretty helpful. So just make sure you know where everything is, and you can write it all down and keep it organized. And that simple act alone will help you feel a lot more in charge and in control. This also goes for if you have investments that are managed by a financial advisor. Make sure you know how to reach that financial advisor, and make sure you understand what that person is doing for you and what it costs you. Definitely make sure you know what it costs you. We can talk about that in a bit. Okay, and then the next thing is to start watching where our money is going. And I see people here thinking, Oak Hammock. My money is going to Oak Hammock. But maybe it's going to other things too. I'm pretty watchful with my money, and I have had the experience of subscribing to Showtime or something and then forgetting. And you don't really notice that $9.99 because it's kind of small, but after 10 months, you just spent $100 to watch a movie. So make sure you know where your money is going. And the thing about this, I just want to pause here and say, notice it without judgment. So remember at the beginning when I said I scolded myself when I ran out of gas? This is a process to be done without any scolding. This is just noticing. It's a data gathering exercise. You're like a journalist reporting on where your money is. There's nothing good or bad, it's just information. And then as you notice that, you can start thinking about any changes you might want to make. Yes, I canceled the Showtime subscription, but you may find things too, where you're spending that you didn't realize, you're spending on something that you didn't realize, and it's not really satisfying for you. So maybe that's something you could cut out. Maybe you're doing things to save money that are taking a huge amount of time, and the amount of money you're saving is not that much. Maybe there's a different way to approach that. So it's worth just thinking about changes you might want to make. This also has to do with Catherine's point about wondering what's going to last longer, you or your money. But if you think about that, the sooner you make a little change to make the money win the race, lose the race, then the more time that change has to take effect. So these intentions are really important. And then you want to, as you create those changes, the goal is then you need to also focus on building wealth and funding those goals, whether it's social justice or our descendants or something else. So those are kind of the 4 steps. What I would say about investing is, I'm sure all of you have investing plans at this point. And I'm happy to take questions if you want to know, if you want to talk about things. I just ask that they not be super specific to your situation. But it's worth thinking about the mix in your investments that you have of stocks and bonds. The advice 10 years ago was to be more conservative, more bond focused than it is today. Now, that's not to say go out and shoot for the moon and buy Bitcoin. I am not saying that. I am 100% not saying that. But it means it's worth thinking about what you need to do to create a mix of stability and enough growth to keep you going. So that can be a nice conversation to have with your financial advisor. And then another thing to think about is, I don't know if you know this term, but your drawdown rate. So what share of your savings you're drawing down every month or every year. And if you can make a small change in that, it can have a big effect on how much is left to grow and sustain you long term. So there are things to consider even now with how your money's invested and how you can still sleep at night and it will be, sustaining you long term. So once you have all those things in place, you know where everything is, you know where it's going, you have decided on any changes you want to make and where it's going, and you've reviewed your wealth building plan and your investments to make sure that they're taking care of you the way you want them to, then you're really off to the races. So that's how it goes. It's self-trust first, and then you need motivation, that personal why, whether it's social justice or your descendants or something else, and then you need those skills. And in that order, it becomes a really effective process, and you can sustain it, and you can revisit it as your life changes or your goals change or things happen. And it's a rinse and repeat kind of a thing. And then you know what you get to? You're a big sunflower and you can flourish. So I'm going to be selling books after we finish this, and I'm happy to talk to you about the book and answer if you have personal questions. I can try, or you can give me your email and we can figure it out. So if you would like to have more detailed information and use the worksheets and everything and the thought exercises that are in the book, that's possible for you. But right now, I'd like to break and take a few questions about whatever you have. Alice, how much is my book? My book is $15. My book is $15. I take cash and credit cards. Makes a good stocking stuffer, I'll just say.
Questions?
Any questions?
Kelley, first of all, I'd like to say that I've read the book and I found it very useful indeed.
Oh, thank you.
It's on, I just had to turn it on. Well, I was. Kelley, I would like to say that I've read the book and I found it very useful indeed.
Oh, good.
So my question is, can I convert a 403B to an IRA?
You can. That's what's called a rollover. What I would suggest that you be watchful for there is where you open the IRA account. That is one of the moments where let's say if it has been known to happen that a financial advisor will come to you and say, you really ought to be converting that 403B to an IRA. It's not working for you where it is. And then they'll happily manage it for you. And what they don't talk about a whole lot is how much that process will cost you. And that is one of the points when you do that, because in all likelihood, it's a significant part of your net worth that even if they take a 1%, 2%, that's a lot. So you want to be really careful about who you're using to do this and think clearly about why you would, what you gain by turning it into an IRA. The tax situation doesn't change. It's still tax deferred and you still have to take money out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any?
Sorry, can I say one more thing? A 403B is a less than optimal thing to leave your children. So that would be a reason to switch it, but just be watchful about fees and where you're putting it and what happens in that process, because it's just in dollar amounts a big money move. And fees are the thing that just, they don't have to.
Do you have any thoughts about ESG investing? Good idea, bad idea?
So, ESG investing. So that's environmental, social, governance investing. It's investing your money in a way that is supports your social values in terms of the environment or social justice or how companies operate or some combination of the above. It's a personal choice if you want to do it or you don't want to do it. There have been periods in time where so-called ESG funds, these are mutual funds that invest only in stocks of companies that follow certain environmental, social justice principles, have outperformed regular funds. There have been times. This is not one of those times. Unfortunately, oil prices are super high, and that is actually meaning that traditional funds that invest in fossil fuels are outperforming. That's not a reason not to invest in ESG funds. You just need to be aware of, what it might mean for you. So it's an entirely personal choice. The other thing I would say about ESG funds is it's worth, if you're serious about it, go in and look at what they're actually invested in. I have seen funds that say, oh, they're super environmental justice, and their top 10 stocks are tech companies. So that's fine. I mean, they're not, ripping up cornfields, but there's other things they're doing that maybe I don't love. So it's worth looking to see exactly what they're doing. And don't forget that there's also always, you can, if you're working with an advisor and they're managing your money, you can say, you can give them a very specific directive. For example, my husband is a lung doctor. Both of my parents died of lung cancer. We have told our financial advisor, we want no tobacco companies. You know, it's not full on ESG, but that's another way to put on a screen. So great question though.
In my limited money management career, I've discovered that it's very important to see what the process under which your so-called financial manager is using your money. So for many years, my late engineer husband was absolutely dedicated to a person and an organization whose initials are ML. And it wasn't
Is that
even
ML now owned by Bank of America?
BOA. And even when I showed him that they were basically capturing the yields on these common stocks and leaving us with the market risk, he would not agree to shift to another agency. When he was in the health pavilion and no longer capable of managing the money, I shifted everything to Vanguard and started managing myself. So I was having a very rapid educational process in doing that.
Yeah, I didn't hear the question in that, but I think what you're asking about is yeah, okay. So because as you started to talk, I thought I have to make sure to talk about advisors and choosing an advisor. So I think I'll take that as your question. How does one go about finding an advisor that will treat you right? This is hugely important. You know, if you want your money to last longer than you do, you need an advisor who isn't going to shorten that process, right? You need an advisor who's going to charge you the lowest fees, you know, like the low fees, and to act, this is super important, in your best interest. The word for that, as inviting as any financial jargon, is that it's an advisor who follows the fiduciary standard. Fiducia what? Okay, but it just means that this advisor is putting your best interests first. And the way you can find an advisor who is doing that is you want an advisor who is, a couple ways you can do it. If they have certain credentials, you can be pretty sure they will. If they are a certified financial professional or a CFP, then they're supposed to follow that fiduciary standard. If you have an advisor who says, oh, well, I have a business degree from UF, you don't know what standard they're following. So make sure your advisor has a CFP or a CFA. That is not as common among people, you know, advisors who work with individuals. Most people with the CFA designation, that's the one I have, work with, you know, pension funds and companies and things like that. So, but they follow the same standard. If you want to go the extra mile and find an advisor who is paid only by your fees, they get zero commissions from anything, there's no chance for a conflict of interest, then those people will belong to an organization, again with the jargon, NAPFA, which is not, you know, some kind of insulation. It is the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. And that it's an association, and their members are fee-only financial advisors. So it's a great way to find, if you're looking for someone, or if you're not happy with your person, if you're feeling like you're maybe getting ripped off, I shouldn't say ripped off, you feel like you're getting overcharged, paying more than you want to, it's worth looking at the CFP directory or the NAPFA directory, and you can maybe find someone else. If you want to go the do-it-yourself route, Phyllis just pointed to something else, which is, and I wanted to talk about this as well, which is you can go for super low fee funds, and that can help. And another key principle is to think about funds, this is my view, that are what's called passively managed. Everybody good with this, or should I explain it? Explain? Okay. So when you have a mutual fund is like a basket of securities. You can have a mutual fund that holds stocks or bonds or a mix. Okay. But somebody has to manage this thing, right? Somebody has to make sure that it's taken care of, and that if something's, like maybe something needs to be sold and something else needs to be bought, and da 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 da. So if you have a manager who is managing that fund with the idea of outperforming the market, that person is going to be trading, because they're going to be trying to beat whatever is going on in the larger world. They're going to be trading a lot, and when they do that, and they spend all that time, they charge money for it. They charge higher fees. Now, that would be fine if they actually beat the market, but over decades of measurement, they don't. They don't. Does anyone remember back in the 1980s, the Wall Street Journal used to have a thing with a dartboard? Anybody remember that? Okay, I was working on Wall Street, so I remember it, because I was, whatever. But they had a thing, they called it the dartboard, and what they would do is just throw darts at a list of stocks and just randomly like choose a stock that way, and then see if it, choose a bunch of investments and then see if an analyst could beat it. And usually the darts won. I mean, it's just not, actively managed funds are unlikely to outperform the market over the long term. So a passively managed fund is a lower cost alternative. Will you beat the market? No. A passively managed fund is designed to mimic the market. Just do what the market does. So you'll get market performance. You're not going to hit, you're not hitting a home run. But you're getting market performance. It's not going to cost you a lot. And you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about it, because everyone at Oak-Hammock has better things to do. So my suggestions, just a couple, and there's a lot more detail on this in the book, but if you do have questions in this area, I do suggest that. But if you want to work with a financial advisor, look for someone who is required to put your best interests first. Look for someone who ideally is paid only with your fees, no commissions from funds or anything else. And then if you want to invest on your own, really seriously consider passively managed funds. They cost less, and they perform over time better than the ones that actual humans manage. That actual humans try and make outperform. Other questions?
I manage my own funds, but I recently found out that one can donate, instead of paying taxes on your IRA, you can donate. Can you explain that a little more for me?
Yes. So, and this is actually could be of interest to a lot of people here. I think what you're talking about is the qualified charitable deduction. Does that sound right? Also known as the QCD, because why make anything sound inviting? So what it is as you know, once you get to, now it's 72.5, but it used to be 70, you have to take distributions from your retirement accounts. Probably many of you here are getting distributions from your retirement accounts. And those distributions count as ordinary taxable income. So if you're getting $1,000 a month, well, okay, let's say you're getting $10,000 a month, right? Then you're gonna, like 3,000, if you were, then you would maybe give 3,000 of that up to taxes. So really you'd have 7. But here's the thing. If you are charitably minded, it sounds like Alice has legacy goals, there are ways to think about using that money to make charitable donations in our lifetimes. So I believe it's up to $100,000 of distributions that you can, instead of taking the money, you can just designate it to a charity. And then that's a qualified charitable distribution. And you know in your heart that you did a good thing, and you don't pay taxes on that piece of the distribution. So that's what it is. And every year, I believe it's $100,000, but check me on that.
Oh, wait.
If the money was in a Roth, you
Uh-huh.
don't have to pay taxes on it, of course.
If the money is in a Roth, you have already paid taxes on it. A Roth IRA, does everybody know? A Roth IRA there are two types of IRAs. Traditional IRA, where your money goes in and you don't pay taxes until you take it out. Or a Roth IRA, where you pay taxes when it goes in. Right? That's you take after tax money. You earn money, pay taxes, and then some of that money goes in the Roth. You've already paid taxes on that money, so you don't have to again. So on a Roth, you do not have to take those distributions. I do want to mention one little detail that came up in legislation in the last couple years, that if you are, passing on money in a Roth IRA to your heirs, it used to be that they could just keep it in the Roth indefinitely, and now there's a time limit on when they have to draw it down. It's, I think, but I'm not sure, 10 years.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Okay, I want to, there we go.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you
Hi.
for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Kelly, you made a mention to somebody that an IRA was a better way to leave an investment to heirs, better than something else, which I didn't catch. But I have things in IRAs and 401ks, and does it make a difference?
I'm not really sure about that on the inheritance side. If you inherit an IRA, right? Like I inherited some IRA money from my dad. So I have to take distributions on that every year, and it's taxable income. And if, you know what, I don't want to say what I'm not certain of. I don't want to give you misinformation. So maybe they're equivalent if you leave them as an estate planning thing. I don't want to say out of turn. For some reason, I had the impression that an IRA would be a little bit better, but as I think it through, I'm not super sure of that. But what was mentioned here was a 403B. So it's just a 403B is the same as a 401k. They're typically, though, offered by nonprofit organizations. So if you work for a nonprofit, you might have a 403B retirement plan, whereas if you work for a for-profit organization, you might have a 401k. That's not always true, but that's usually who offers those different things. And they work the same tax-wise. It's all the same. It's just they're all beautifully, poetically named after sections of the tax code.
Thank you.
More back here.
Anyone else?
Since I have the microphone, I'll ask my question.
Okay.
And if it's too detailed, you can tell me later. But while I was working, one of the things I did in the voluntary part of my contribution is to invest in an IRA that was a Roth. So I have a Roth IRA, and I also wanted one that nobody was going to mess with. So I got the total stock market, and Roth total stock market seemed to me, for two reasons, to be a logical way to park part of my money and make it last a long time. Well, I got a letter from the company that owns this, and they said, oh, you have to take that money now and put it into a brokerage with us. And I said, what? And they said, well, I mean, you can continue the way you are, but we can't guarantee that it'll be safe that way. I mean, it just sounded really, really weird to me. This may be too complicated for an answer, but you would think a Roth, no taxes, a total stock market, you get everything at the same time. There's no in and out handling of it by anyone who thinks they know better than the dartboard. And I was very happy with it. And I'm not very happy with it.
We might need to have a sidebar about that one because there is
Okay.
a lot there that I think it might be a specific. I have some questions for you.
Okay,
So I think let's perhaps have a sidebar.
all right.
But it's a good question. I mean, these kinds of things happen. I mean, whether it's the call that Catherine got or a broker calling you and saying, oh, you should really convert your 403B to an IRA. Like, what's their motivation when they make that call? And what would be the, what are they trying to, what's their motivation in making that call? Is there potential for them in this? So, yeah. So, but why they would tell you have to convert a Roth IRA, which is a retirement account, to a taxable brokerage account, that sounds very strange. So we'll talk.
It sounds self-serving. What do you think of the security of our financial accounts given AI and its spread among the nefarious aspects of humanity?
I think we don't know where AI is going to take us. I think it has some potential for good. It obviously is a wild card. Does it increase the potential for scams? I would think so. I think we just don't know enough about how it's going to be used and what kinds of guardrails are going to be around it. I think it's a great point to remember that we live in an uncertain and rapidly changing world. And even if you're not managing your own money, it's really a good idea to be vigilant. Check your statements. If you notice or you hear that the stock market had a big day up or down, take a look and see if your stuff moved in a relatively parallel fashion. It's really, just put it on your calendars that once a week you're just going to go in and look and make sure everything's okay. And then another thing I would say about your overall financial security is, do you all know about checking your credit score and your credit report? Is that a thing that they've talked about here? Okay, you can do it for free every year with each of the credit reporting agencies. It's a really good idea. And you can also, they're just really good ideas. I think vigilance is honestly our best defense. Vigilance and skepticism. So when you get that call saying, oh, convert your Roth IRA to a brokerage account, stop, think, ask questions. Yeah, and check your statements. Even if someone is managing your money for you, just make sure, what was that withdrawal? What was that they took out for fees? Why was it so much more than last month? Or just notice, what's happening here, what might be going on.
Just to reinforce something that you said earlier, if you get a mandatory withdrawal and send it directly to the charity, then it no longer counts as income to you.
Correct.
I did not understand the part about directly, and I withdrew, the first time I did it, I withdrew the money and in turn sent it to the charity thinking that would be the same thing, and found out the hard way it was not.
Yes, very good point. Very good point. Yeah, if you want to do a qualified charitable deduction like that, you make sure that you tell the company managing your retirement account that that's what you want to do with it, that you're directing it to, the Nature Conservancy or whoever, that it shouldn't come to you. And then it counts as part of what you're allowed to do as a charitable donation and not pay taxes. So I guess we should wrap, and I'm happy to talk more in the back of the room. But whoops. Okay, it's okay. It was just a closing slide. We don't have to. It's perfectly fine. Okay, then I'll just close. So the truth is, as the title of my book says, you are worthy. You matter, and your financial wellness matters. And you are capable and successful in many ways. You've worked hard, which is how you've had the great privilege to live here at Oak Hammock, right? You are really capable, and you can be capable with money as well. You can learn to use your money to live the great, big, beautiful life that you deserve. So thank you.
On behalf of all of us, I want to thank Kelley for an excellent presentation, for coming here. She will be available now in the back of the room if you'd like personal questions and time with her. Also, don't forget the cookies. Thanks for coming.
What would Oak Hammock be without cookies?
Was it a Roth IRA that you were asking about? Was that with UF? No, okay, because UF had a thing a couple of years ago where we had to put stuff in the brokerage account when they changed the manager. They changed, I don't know who they had before to Fidelity, and that's what happened to me.
No, it was not with you that.
I'll be at the lunch, but I'm going up to get some money. I have no money.
After listening to this.
Sheila,
I'll be back.
do you have plans for lunch?
Yes, I'm going to meet some folks from the classics
Oh,
department.
too bad.
Thanks, yeah.
Yeah, because John Axe and Janet will not be coming. I was looking for
No.
a couple
John
more
X,
people.
I'm getting some money for, I'm buying something, but he wants a
Thanks.
book.
Okay.
And I'm going out and getting my money.
All right.
All right, I'll be back though.
Figure out how to turn this off.